Her name was Beverly. The circumstances around her death were odd. Apparently she was meeting up with someone at the time. There had been whispers about a possible affair. Lots of people thought my uncle probably had something to do with the fire, but no one could prove it. I never spent much time with Uncle Reed. He's always seemed a bit off to me. Something in the eyes. A bit unhinged. Always watching. Anyway, a few weeks ago, my uncle dies. I won't go into the details, but I will say he left a note. It basically said that he had enough of living with himself and the horrible thing he did. Yeah? Okay, so, yesterday, I'm cleaning out his house to sell it. I'm moving an old cabinet and I see something poking out of a piece of broken plaster behind it. I pull out the plaster and it comes away easily. I find what's been hiding there, a file folder. I open the file and inside I see a typed transcript from a recording. It said, "Actually, I think it'll be easier if I just copy it out for you. I really want to hear what you guys think about it. My mind has been reeling since I found it. I took a photo and sent over to the police. And now I am worried I made a mistake. Here it is. CONFIDENTIL. PROPROPERTYOFLA and GLEYPOLICEDCMENT. Interviewee, unknown none. Interviewer, Detective Beverley Yang DY. Location, Jefferson Farm. Langley. Date, December 12th, 1993. Following material is a transcription of a recording pulled from Officer Yang's personal recorder after it was recovered from the Jefferson Farm fire. TY, it is 346 M on December 12, 1993. This is Detective Yang. I am entering the warehouse on the abandoned and Jeffrey Farm lot. I am with. No. Don't say my name. TY, this won't be shared with anyone outside my team. You have my word. And I don't know your team. TY, you trust me. Right? And of course. TY, you can trust them. And I don't want to be traced back to this. These people pause. TY, what is it? And did you hear that? TY, what? And over there. Pause. Sound of muffled banging in the background. Unknown. Oh, no, it's okay. Just the wind hitting the door there. TY, do you think you're in danger? Unsharp and take a breath, just don't say my name. Please. Bev. TY, alright. I won't. On this way. TY, why are you talking to me? If you think it is a risk. And because what I saw here, it didn't seem right. Someone needs to know. Someone has to look into it. Who better than you? TY, what did you see? And I told you. I need to show you. You need to see this first. I don't think you'll believe me otherwise. Footsteps walking. I'm sorry. I didn't ask about Reed's mom. All this I show she doing? TY, she sees. The doctors aren't hopeful at this point. I just wish there was something we could do. And yeah, same. Give my best to Reed. Okay, right over here. Footsteps walking. TY, look. TY, oh my God. What is this? And I heard them call at the aquarium. TY, who's they? And the people that were here. People in blue suits and in lab coats. They came first. With security for both. Armed. With big guns. The two groups shook hands. They were serious. Very businesslike. You know. Some tension. And at the same time, I think there was some excitement too. That's what they called it. This room. The aquarium. And they were inspecting it together. They wanted everything to be perfect. TY, the aquarium. For the record, I am looking at a large glass sound of knocking on plastic correction. A plastic box. A room. There are chairs positioned around it. Facing in. And the people took their seats there. On this side, the folks in blue suits. And on this side, the ones in the lab coats. Taking notes. TY, watching what was happening inside. And yes. TY, for the record. The box. The aquarium. It has a door. There's lock on the outside. Inside it looks like it was set up for a fancy dinner. There are flowers all around the room. There's a small table with tablecloth. Place settings for two. Candles. Burnt down. There are some dinner plates with some food still left on it. Is that not? On blood. Yes. TY, there's blood on the tablecloth. On part of the dinner plate. And there is a blood-soaked napkin on the floor. What happened? Who was inside? And after they all sat down, a girl was brought in. Teen looking. maybe 18. She was wearing a nice dress. She looked dressed up, ushered in by armed security and a man in a blue suit. She was put inside the box. The man spoke to her a bit in, I think it was Japanese. Not sure. They had microphones inside. See there, so people out hear it here inside. Then he left and locked the door behind him. To why, did she look scared? Unknown. She looked excited. Then, a woman in a lab coat came in with a boy. He looked around the same age as the boy. Before he entered the room, he stopped and spoke with the woman. It was in Hindi, so I knew what they were saying. I was outside. There, see that crack? Ty, yeah. And so I had a good view and could hear some of what was going on. The boy was telling her he wasn't sure about this. She told him just to meet her and see how it goes. He nodded and squeezed her hand. She was maybe in her 70s. But nut, I don't know. It was short, but there was something to that hand squeeze. It looked intimate. The others, they wouldn't have been able to see it. You could just see it from this angle. The woman opened the door for him and he went in. The door was locked behind. Everyone watching went quiet. They were all watching closely. Pause. And did you just hear footsteps? Hello? Is there anyone there? Pause. No. I think I'm just nervous. Hearing things. Okay, where was I? The boy had just got put in the aquarium. The girl and the boy stared at each other for a bit. Then they shook hands. They said how great it was to finally meet. Almost unbelievable. The girl, Lin, said. They introduced themselves. The girl said she was Lin. The boy said he was Eric. Lin said that she had only ever heard him referred to as the other one until then. The other one? Yes, that's what she said. And they sat down to dinner and chatted a bit. They spoke mostly in English to each other, and a bit in Hindi and the other language. I really think it was Japanese. And I don't want to give the wrong information. They both spoke perfectly. In English and Hindi at least. No accent or anything. They both mentioned that they didn't get much opportunity to dress up. They both seemed smart. 14s. You know. The girl especially. How so? On something in the way she spoke. And the way she carried herself. They both seemed. Different. To my difference. Odd. The girl seemed. Intense. After a little, she poured wine for them both. She raised her glass and said to us. The boy raised his glass, but then pulled back. It looked like he was panicking. He said he couldn't do this. He stood up and went to the door and called out a name. Helen. That's when I saw the girl pick up her knife. Her knife? Yeah, her steak knife. While the boy was calling for Helen. Maybe Ellen. The woman. The one who brought him in. That must be easier because she stood up for a moment. But then sat back down. She shook her head at him. The girl told the boy that their teams negotiated a strict non-intervention for this first meeting. She said it was a big deal. For them. I heard one of the women wearing a lab coat say, they will never understand how big. The boy went back to the table and then, does it seem quiet to you? Yes. The doors stopped banging. The wind stopped. Unknown. Yeah? And then the boy went back to the table. Yes. He sat down and apologized. Said it was a lot to take in. He said he thought Lin is lying until they showed him her files. The girl said she didn't see any of his files. Then the boy asked her if they told her what they want. I could see some of the watchers look at each other. Nervous maybe. The girl said no one had told her anything. But she knows what they want. It's obvious. She said, they want us to fall in love. So this was some kind of organized first date. Right. So then, the boy tells her that he can't do that. He can't fall in love with her. He loves someone else. Then, it happened so fast. The girl leapt across the table and jammed the knife into his throat. The boy looked confused. He pulled the knife out. That's where the blood is from. Yes. It was horrible. It was spurting out. He was gurgling. What did they do? The people watching? Nothing. Nothing. They just sat and watched. And took notes. So they just watched him die? They watched. The girl just sat back and watched. What? That's horrible. The boy took the napkin and pressed it into his neck. Then he wiped the blood away. Wiped it away and, even from over there I could see, The wound was healing. It wasn't a moment before it was gone. He used some water from his glass to clean up the rest of the blood from his neck. But he was healed. To why? You're telling me there was a boy in there that was stabbed in the neck and he just healed? And yes. I know it sounds, but it's true. It's true. I saw it happen. DY, you sure you're remembering things properly? Shot can do weird things. And the boy was alright. He was stabbed through the neck. He was bleeding. It was bad. And then it wasn't. He was perfectly fine. And I saw all these other people just watching, taking notes. They didn't look surprised at all. Slightly annoyed, but not surprised. To why, and how did the girl seem? And the girl smiled, said I had to see. To know for sure. To why she knew that was going to happen? And I don't know. She said that it has been so long. She had given up hope she would meet someone like her. Do I like her? Unright. She said that she always thought if she met someone like her she would be happy. That she wouldn't be alone. But suddenly she feels sad. That he has had to suffer like her. That he will have to. She looked out to the people watching and said they want so badly what we have. The boys said they want us to have a child. Do I? So that's what these people are really after. A baby like them. And yes. The girls said that they hope it will unlock their secrets. And she looked at every one of the people gathered as she said, they think immortality is a gift. But they don't know they're searching for a curse. To why immortality? If they really are immortal then. Do you smell smoke? And yeah, I do. There. TY, get to the door. Quick. On its locked. Try the other. TY, locked. There's someone outside. On help. Please. We're trapped in here. Sound of gunshots. And oh my god. It's them. TY, they're getting rid of the evidence. Sound of gunshots. TY, we need to take cover. Now. Sound of recorder falling. TY, follow me. Into the aquarium. Sound of gunshots. Sounds of muffled voices. Note there were no bodies recovered from the fire. The whereabouts of Detective Yang and the unnamed source is still unknown at this time. So, what is this? This is weird. Right? I always thought Uncle Reed seemed off. But well, of course he seemed unhinged. Right? Of course he was always watching. He knew there was more to what happened to his wife and he was looking for the answer. I have so many questions. How did my uncle find this file? Is Beverly even dead? And immortals. And the note Uncle Reed left, when my mom read it, she said that she didn't believe her brother could have killed Bev. She was adamant. I thought it was denial. She didn't believe that he wrote the note. She compared it to other things he had written. I thought the writing looked the same. But Mom pointed out the swoop of the one Y was different. At the time, I figured, you know, he was in a bad place. Of course 1Y may be a bit different. But now, if someone knew he had found this file, what if someone didn't want him to know about it? When I handed the file over to the police, I wasn't thinking. Now I am. Now I'm thinking that was a mistake. What do you think? Should I be worried? What do you think I should? I just heard a noise. Footsteps. Shit. I think someone is in my house. Fuck FUCK. There's identically 3 people in my house, oh my god. IVLCOE candy the Doro. Hiding in my closet. I hear banging. FUCK. They're in my room, they're coming for me. Need to post. PLCICLP. Well, I think I should rather say where he was. And that's the thing that really creeps me out. But to tell you that story, I have to give you some background information. Growing up, my life wasn't what one would call rosy. I'm an only child, and not even a wanted one at that. At least, if you could ask my mother, she might tell you. Then again, she probably would lie. You know, to keep up appearances. Those times when she told me how she really felt about my existence were only ever in private, and more often than not after something bad had happened. Either when she was holding an ice pack to her face, cooling the new black eye, or after she had fallen down the stairs drunk. She wasn't a good woman, and even less of a mother. My dad, on the other hand, was something almost worse. He wasn't the abusive one, at least not to me. Or well, at least not in the beginning. I still have memories of us visiting the park and playground. Pushing me on the swing. While I laughed. That was the main difference between my parents. My mother would have done something like that as well, but only so other people could see how normal our family was. Dad didn't give a shit about that. He never cared about what anyone else said or thought. All that mattered to him was himself. What brought him fun? What cured his boredom? He liked to drink. Yes, but he wasn't a mean drunk. I never once remember him hitting me or even screaming at me when he stumbled home from the bar or beating my mom when the beer ran dry. That wasn't his style. The cruelty he displayed was done stone cold sober. And in a way, that makes it so much worse. My parents fought almost all the time. Between my mom calling my dad useless and a piece of shit, spitting on him, and him tripping her, shoving her face first into walls, or making her cry, my upbringing really felt like hell. As I said before, Mom was the more obvious abusive one, at least to me. And the older I got, the more I became her personal lightning rod. If Dad hit her, she hit me. He punched her for mouthing off. She'd make sure I would feel her pain. He made fun of her life. She'd do her best to make me cry. Well, at least I wasn't popular at school, so I didn't have people who could witness that stuff. The only one who saw and knew what was going on was Dad, and more often than not, he thought it was funny. I do remember him chuckling when Mom managed to make me cry, and almost howling with laughter when she pushed me so I fell and hit my head on the edge of the table, pulling down a bowl of cereal in the process. Yeah, that was my dad, always looking for things that made it interesting. Well, he did start actively participating in the crueler stuff once I hit puberty. He started getting this strange look on his face from time to time. This grin felt so cold and cruel. I still shiver when I think about it. Once I saw it, I knew that something was about to happen. Sometimes he would hit me when I walked past and delight at my pained groans or shrieks. And I always reacted, because, not giving him the satisfaction only lead to a second, harder punch. But he at least kept aiming away from my face and only hit my body, where almost no one would see the bruises. Of course, I tried talking to teachers about it, but only once. It happened when I was about 14 or 15. My coach saw a giant black bruise on my ribs and asked me about it, and I foolishly told him the truth. That was when I think everything began to change. Police were called, as was CPS. They turned up at our home, and Dad played innocent, while Mom supported him. Of course, she did. What would the neighbors think? That night, Dad woke me up with his big hand pressed on my mouth and nose, while he asked me if I would prefer it like that. I struggled and tried to push his hand away, but he kept me in place with what seems like the greatest ease. He began insulting me, threatening me, making fun of me. The only thing I remember vividly is how my arms and legs started to shake, and I felt myself passing out in the darkness. When I came to again, Dad was gone, and the house was silent once more. But from then on, he got far more vicious. To me and Mom. Sometimes I was startled awake by my mother suddenly screaming in pain. Other times, I found her sitting on the floor, crying. I know how fucked up that sounds, but I hugged her and told her that we could just leave because even after all that messed up stuff, she still was my mother and I was scared for her. Well, I think back then, sitting on the floor of the kitchen next to her, she had her first and only genuine conversation with me. She told me that we couldn't, that Dad would find us, as he always did. Twice before, she had tried, and I had been just a baby, but he always knew where we were. She warned me. I think about that conversation from time to time, especially now. It's giving me the creeps. Half a year later, she was dead. I think I was 15 by then when I came home from school and immediately felt that something was off. There was this noise coming from inside the house. As I stood in the doorway, I felt my legs going weak. The sound of Dad hitting someone, something I had heard so many times before. Yet in that moment, I immediately realized that it sounded different. Wrong. I really wanted to turn around and run, to leave on my own, but my body didn't listen to me. Slowly, I walked into the house, toward the source of those dreadful sounds, and I think you can already imagine what I saw. Dad was standing over my mom's lifeless body, with that strange grin on his face, still hitting her over and over again. That sight has been seared into my mind. I've spent years in therapy, yet can't shake it, can't stop myself from waking up, screaming, almost every night. Back then, I was sure I would be next. That in a matter of seconds, he would be upon me, beating me to death as well. But that didn't happen. He just turned around to look at me, then smiled and told me to call the cops. "This is going to be interesting," he said. It took me what felt like an eternity to call the police, while he still kept on hitting that lifeless, broken, and bloody corpse on the floor. The cops showed up and took him away, and all the while, he still had this creepy smile on his face. I would love to say that my life got better from then on. But, the prosecution wanted me as a witness. But in the end, they decided they didn't need to put me through the trauma again, as Dad was completely cooperative on his own. He was sentenced to life in prison, and I was put into the system. It wasn't overly cruel, but since I was almost of age, no one bothered to do much with me anyway. I stopped getting beaten, at least, but the mean comments and cruel jokes were replaced by almost complete isolation. As I said before, no one wanted anything to do with me. So even if I knew that I should have been happy, my life didn't really get better until I finally turned 18 and could set off on my own. I struggled and fought to carve out my own life, and after years of setbacks, I think I finally managed to get at least a semblance of what one might call normalcy. Working hard, in my case, actually helped. I own a small, run-down house in a bad but affordable neighborhood. I have a steady job and have managed to get promoted a few times already. The only thing I'm missing in my life is company. Well, I think you can guess why I have trouble with that, especially now. You see, Dad has written me letters. It started pretty soon after he was incarcerated. I know, I shouldn't even have opened them. But back then, I felt like that was the only connection I still had with anyone. I only wrote back once, but he didn't even mention anything about what was in my letter. As always, everything was about himself. He told me what had happened after the trial, how he didn't care a damn thing about what anyone thought. Stuff I expected. I got long, almost rambling letters about prison life and the people he met in there, who he liked and who he hated, how one of the wardens mistreated him. Then a month later, how that man had died in an unfortunate accident. Sometimes I read those messages out of boredom. Other times I threw them out. But at least once a month, I got a letter in the mail, addressed to me. I thought it would stop after I left the orphanage. But no matter where I stayed, it always found me. He always found me, just as my mother said. I got a letter when I moved into a small, shabby apartment, even one when I was homeless for a few weeks and slept at work. Of course, I tried to ask the prison he was in if they were responsible for that, but they denied any involvement outright. I even got one as soon as I bought this small rundown house. It greeted me when I stepped onto the curb as a homeowner for the first time. The first letter in my mailbox, and it was from the man that fucked up my life. I read through it and the content was almost as I expected. Someone had come at my dad with a knife and had soon found themselves in an accident. Prison food was boring, as was the routine. It wasn't interesting anymore. I could feel sweat breaking out all over my body as I read those lines. Old memories flooded my mind. He hated being bored. That was always the time when things got worse. Another letter followed. 2 weeks later, all it contained were 5 words. "Seeing you might be interesting." I called the police as soon as I had read it, and they assured me that everything would be fine. Damn liars. I know something is off. Someone called me yesterday, asking me if I had heard anything. There are police cars driving up and down the street in front of my house. Every half hour. I think he is broken out of prison. I can feel it in my bones. Something is coming. Thinking back now, that last letter was different. No postmark. Shit. As if someone had simply dropped it into my mailbox.